Making an Archtop Guitar by Robert Benedetto. And the thing I'm learning so far is I gotta slow down. I try to hurry through it and then I make mistakes. We're gonna follow it chapter by chapter. We already picked the wood and started on the mold. So we're really on chapter 3, and I'm gonna call it week 3. And it's the carving the top and back plates, learning about tap tuning, and then get to the carving. And that's as much as we'll do this week. Or on the first episode, we roughed in the neck, but actually the neck isn't until chapter 13. So we'll put that aside until we get the body taken care of. I started on, using reclaimed wood for the top, but it was a disaster because of this big knot. So maybe reclaimed wood, not such a great idea. Just try to get quarter sawn and clear, less knots. And the back plate, I had better luck because it had a couple knots, but they were smaller and in a better place, not right on the edge. So I got a good start on the back plate. It's thinner than the book calls for, but this is my practice build, so we'll get it working with what we have on hand before I spend a lot of money on nicer material. So we got to finish scraping that down. I redid the top plate with cedar from that playground lumber we got from the auction. And this is coming along. It carves a lot easier. So I already drilled the holes to the depth, so when you chisel down to where the holes disappear, then you'll have your rough dome shaped up. And I also made this little guy, this little depth gauge. There's a drawing of it in the book. He doesn't really say exactly how to make it, but he has a pretty precise drawing that you redraw yourself according to the measurements. So it's just got a little flexible piece. This is a walnut, a little flexible piece. So when you squeeze down, the gap is right at 1/4 inch. So for the thickness gauge, you just keep carving and you test. Gotta get a hold of it though. Get a hold of the trigger. There we go. You carve and you measure and you carve and you measure until you can close the thing all around. Because I did it to where when you get it closed, it's the right depth. That took like most of the day just to make one tool. But that's what it takes. You got to take your time because I hurry too much, I think. And then I get myself in trouble and make mistakes. And then you like snowball all that. So just do one thing at a time. We got to fine tune the mold. I actually cut it away. Talking about mistakes, I actually cut it away too much. So I glued some cedar back into it, and we'll refine the shape so the mold is ready for for building the sides out in the following chapters. And that's week number 3, and we'll get back to it. And now for the slow motion section with dreamy music and cool lighting. Just tune it up with the strop. I do it like 40 times. It seems to work for me. I learned like sharpening and stuff from Paul Sellers. Here's a link to Paul's videos on sharpening, and it helped quite a bit. And then we just work on it until the holes are barely dimples. And sometimes I'll take the mallet too and just get the bigger chunks. But you know me, I don't want to go. I'll get too ambitious and then I'll take a big chunk out of the front that's too thin. So I'm just got to be mindful because of kind of the rough carpenter style that I grew up with, framing houses and stuff. You just blow chunks out to get it to fit. And now we gotta like carve with a little more thought in mind of what we're working on. There's a bit of a knot here, so I'll just try to chisel it not as deep. And that's it. It's going to take a few hours. But I put on some music or a book. I call them book on tape. Audiobooks. You know, they're on the phone now. Digital downloads. Listen to a story and chip away. So we keep working on that. And once I start we get this domed, and when I start getting to the inside, and that's when we put this thing to work to measure our depth and the thickness inside. We got a long ways to go before I can get this in here. But we're starting to actually get into a place we want. So I'll do the tops on both. I still have a little scraping to do on this one, but we got it rounded. And then I'll start in on the back, concave on both, after both the domes are done. Ooh, trying some new camera angles. I got this thing clamped to a stick on the ceiling. And like I said, just keep chiseling. We'll fast forward through some of this later. You know, I did take a week, and I did get permission from the book publisher to talk about the book online. So that's good. And most mornings I'll review the book just to kind of get prepared to what I'm going to do the following week. Now, you know, on the back, I did use the router to cut the different depths all the way around. I guess you can do all kinds of methods. Chiseling and sculpting is somewhat therapeutic for me, because I sit at the computer all day long, doing graphics for stuff, my other gig. So I get on my feet and do some sculpting. Like Michaelangelo says, you chip away all the parts that don't look like what you're trying to make. You know, it's inside. The thing you want to sculpt is inside. You just gotta reveal it. It was one of those. I think it was Michelangelo, or the other Ninja Turtle. A great artist of our history. Yeah, I like reading about great artists in their lives. They kind of glamorize it, I'm sure. Sure, life wasn't easy back then. But I read this one biography about Michelangelo in the Sistine Chapel painting. For him, it was a gig that would help him get to another gig that he really wanted to do. You know, he wanted to do some other massive sculpture, but I guess it was the Pope at the time, was his patron who hey, I need a painting in the chapel here. And I'm like, I'll do it, but as long as I can do this sculpture later. I'll see if I can find that book, and I'll put a link to it. It's really good stuff. And I like reading about Stradivarius and the other makers of the era. Now here's a point where I gotta make sure I'm not scraping too much away. I scored a little line here, so I make sure I don't go too thick. It's a 1/4 inch. Because I can sit here, tell guitar and art stories, and then chip away too much. Chip away too much and sculpt away too much. And then have to start over again. We already started over once. So that's it for this week. In the next session of the video, we'll have these ready for final scraping, and then we'll start fitting the braces. That's what's in the book. Yeah, so we are on, like I said earlier, we're on chapter 3, so we're gonna finish carving, get them both scraped, and then cut the F-holes. We could probably do the F-holes and the bracing in the next session. So that'll be coming up next time on the Building the Archtop Guitar. And now back to slow motion, cool lighting, and dreamy music. I did mention tap tuning. So, in the book he shows you how to hold it kind of, it's like about 1/3 of the way up on either one. And you hold it next to your ear, and you tap around where the bridge might be. And the tone, it started out as being just a real plunky tone, but as you remove wood, the tone starts to drop. See, this one's still pretty thick, so I don't know if you can hear. It's still pretty high. And then this one's a lot thinner. We're a little closer on this one, and you can tell that it's a lower tone. It has a bit more sustain, and this one is ding, ding, and this one is ding. So, and they talk about, I'm no expert at the moment. Probably, you just keep learning. I'll never claim to be an expert. I did find some success with tap tuning, and when I built some of my other stuff so far, it really helps to scrape and listen and scrape and kind of get down to where when you tap the plate, it kind of sings back to you. And that's about it. Until next time.